Thank you for joining us today for another exclusive interview sponsored by Emovet. Help your horses reach their maximum potential with Emovet's line of natural homeopathic products. I'm your host today, Aurelian Drumian. Today we are delighted to welcome Jimmy George, a seasoned expert with over 2 decades at Tattersalls and now a key leader at the International Racing Bureau, IRB. With a deep understanding of global bloodstock markets and a visionary approach to international racing, Jimmy is poised to shape the future of IRB. Join us as we discuss his plans for expanding racing into emerging markets, fostering synergies between sales and racing, and navigating the next frontier of global thoroughbreds development. Stay tuned for an engaging conversation with a true innovator in the racing industry. Jimmy, as I mentioned, great to have you here.
Yeah, pleasure to join you all.
So as you also mentioned earlier, having spent over 2 decades at Tattersalls, focusing on global markets, how do you plan to leverage your international relationships to further expand IRB's influence in emerging racing jurisdictions?
I would hope that the experience I've gleaned with Tattersalls in the sort of the global racing and bloodstock business will complement what the IRB has achieved over very many years on the global racing scene. It's very complementary in itself. The two businesses have a lot in common. I mean, obviously, Tattersalls is geared entirely to the bloodstock scene. It's Europe's oldest, well, the world's oldest bloodstock auctioneers and Europe's largest by some considerable margin. And the IRB is a company that has carved an important niche in the world of international racing from its very beginnings back in the late 1970s. So I see that the experience that I've gleaned at Tattersalls over, it's actually more than 3 decades rather than 2 decades. I started back there in 1986. So yeah, I've been plying my trade there for an awful long time. But equally in that time, we've always worked actually very closely with the International Racing Bureau. The two companies have a lot of synergy, continue to do so, and which is one of the reasons why I'll continue to play a small role for Tattersalls in certain overseas markets, particularly America and Japan. So that in itself emphasizes the way in which companies like the International Racing Bureau and Tattersalls will always have an enormous amount in common, and what benefits the International Racing Bureau can also benefit Tattersalls as well. And so I think the experience I've gained over the decades of involvement in the industry will hopefully complement what this company has achieved over very many years as well.
I think the IRB has been, instrumental in launching major international races like the Dubai World Cup or even the Saudi Cup. What new opportunities do you see for developing similar prestigious events, in untapped markets?
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is that the International Racing Bureau is already involved in an awful lot of the most prestigious global racing events. We've been working for so many of the sort of leading racing jurisdictions from throughout the world for a very, very long time, and extremely proud to have done so. You mentioned Saudi. The International Racing Bureau was part of that sort of groundbreaking project from the very beginning, and have worked with outfits like the Breeders' Cup from pretty well the outset back in the 1980s. JRA, Japan Racing Association, Hong Kong Jockey Club. There are so many unbelievably prestigious racing jurisdictions and racecourses that the IRB have worked with for a very, very long time. We're proud to have had those associations. These are fantastic companies, institutions that we've been working with. It's an extensive list it's an extensive team of people that we've been working with for over this long period. And in that respect, it's quite hard to see, the new horizons, but obviously we are constantly monitoring and scouring the world to see where new opportunities lie. And I don't think that's just the International Racing Bureau. That is our role, to promote international racing and uh, to make it, one, to raise awareness. I think the awareness of the importance of international racing has never been higher. And it's fantastic for the IRB to play a small part in that process. But equally, yeah, we're alive to any opportunities that may be out there, and to build on the contacts and the experience we've accumulated by working with so many of the world's most respected racing jurisdictions for as long as we have.
Amazing. You also have quite an amazing marketing background, at Tattersalls. What fresh perspective do you hope to bring to IRB's promotion of international racing events and services?
It's early days on that score. I've been here for 6 days. But look, as I said earlier, the experience, or the sort of joint synergies between the international bloodstock markets and global racing, I think cannot be overstated. They do complement each other. And the extensive network of contacts that I've been able to establish through my time at Tattersalls in literally every continent in the world can only be of benefit to my new role at the International Racing Bureau. Having said that, I have to recognise the extraordinary job that the team here have done over very many years. I mean, the core team here, the likes of Adrian Beaumont and Jane George and Max Pimlott and Ian Russell and the wider team here, and obviously my predecessor Alistair Donald. I mean, these people have worked for the International Racing Bureau for a very, very long time. In many cases, even longer than I was at Tattersalls. So that gives you a flavour of the depth of experience and knowledge that existing team at the IRB already have. And I see my arrival into this role as very much trying to harness what they've already achieved. And I don't think anybody should underestimate the achievements that this small company, and it is a small company, but it's carved a very important niche over its nearly 50 years of existence. And as I say, I hope I can bring perhaps slightly new perspectives, but whilst at the same time not underestimating the fact that these guys have achieved a massive amount, and continue to do so while working very, very closely with these leading jurisdictions and racing clubs and racecourses from throughout the world, and of course racecourses in the UK and Ireland as well.
I'd like to also mention and talk a bit more about your bloodstock, industry experience. How do you think this shaped your understanding of, what owners and trainers may need when competing internationally? And how do you think this influence IRB services?
I think one of the key things, or one of the most important things I learned almost from the very beginning of my time at Tattersalls back in the late 1980s, is how interdependent the racing and bloodstock industries are, and neither can exist without the other.
Okay.
Without racing, there's no bloodstock industry. Without bloodstock, there's no racing industry. The bloodstock industry supplies the raw material. for the racing product. And as I say, it's a interdependent relationship, and as such, I always found myself, and I think anybody who works in for sales companies, not just Tattersalls, but sales companies throughout the world would share my views that we're very fortunate to work for sales companies in that every part of the industry almost will find their way to your door at some point or another. Those involved in racing will always come to the horse sales at some point or another. And we were talking about it here in the office at the IRB the other day, in that obviously an awful lot of our clients here are the English and Irish trainers. The trainers service is, if you want, our window on the world, where we help the individual trainers make their entries into races throughout Europe, in particular France, Germany, Italy, Scandinavia, wherever in Europe. That's a day-to-day service that we provide to largely British and Irish trainers, but also French trainers, German trainers, and Italian trainers as well. Anybody who feels that we can assist them in that basic day-to-day function of helping them race their horses in other countries. We were saying that actually you're more likely to be able to see a huge number of the IRB clients by walking around, by pointing over my shoulder to up the hill, because that's where Tattersalls is.
Oh,
Seeing a huge number of our clients in one place at one time, at Tattersalls, at one of the yearling sales or the horses in training sale, or one of those big international sales, than you will by going to an English racecourse or an Irish racecourse. The racing and breeding industries converge on these prestigious sales like nowhere else almost, and that I think demonstrates how interdependent they are. And that was, as I say, from the word go, that was something I took from my time at Tattersalls, and will continue to play a part with in the seat I sit in now at the International Racing Bureau. None of us are anything without the other.
fair enough. Very fair. And looking at, your predecessor, Alistair Donald, 23-year tenure, what aspect of his leadership style and achievements do you most hope to build upon?
He's a tough act to follow. He's Look, Alistair was a fantastic figurehead, fantastic managing director at the International Racing Bureau for a very long period of time, admired and respected, I think, throughout the world, and obviously also by the team here, who held him in the very highest esteem, as did I. I've known Alistair for a very long time. I have a long association with this company, not least for the fact that you might have spotted the similarity in the surname of one of the people I mentioned earlier, Jane George, who is my wife and has worked here at the International Racing Bureau. She's one of the directors here. She's worked here for longer than I worked at Tattersalls. So I've known everybody who works here for a very long time, and Alistair I count as a friend, as well as somebody that I admired professionally for a very long time. So look, if I can command even half the respect that Alistair has done for all of his time here at the IRB, I will count myself as very fortunate. He brought an enormous amount of knowledge, wise counsel and judgment and integrity to the role here, and those are attributes that I think I obviously aspire to, and I think we all can aspire to, or at least can. Even if we can't, we should.
Also, how do you envision, creating synergies between the bloodstock sales sector and international racing, that could benefit both industries?
Well, as I said earlier, they're so interdependent.
Mm,
You know what, and I think it's interesting that in my time at Tattersalls, we would find ourselves in the same environment as the IRB team. We would be present at the Breeders' Cup every year, one or other of us. Quite often, it would be me. I absolutely adore the Breeders' Cup. I think it's the one of the very pinnacles of our sport. And and also throughout the Gulf region, my close colleague Jason Singh at Tattersalls, would attend almost all of the major race meetings in the Gulf, whether it be the Dubai World Cup, the Saudi Cup, the Bahrain International Trophy, Qatar, every step of the way, wherever Tattersalls was and these international race meetings, you would find the IRB team there as well. And what they were doing would complement what Tattersalls were doing, and vice versa. We can always feed off each other, and their expertise dovetailed with the Tattersalls expertise, and now it'll be vice versa. And I think again it goes back to what I was saying about how interlinked both sides of this wonderful industry are, the bloodstock and breeding side and the racing side. They're nothing without each other. And the international aspect of racing is massively important and continues to grow in importance and significance. I think, I look back on the history of this company, of the IRB, and you can't but help think that in a way it was a little bit ahead of its time. The company began in the late 70s, started by a gentleman called David Hedges, with some illustrious fellow board members in the shape of Sir Peter O'Sullivan and Bruff Scott. And they had a shared vision that racing on the international stage, racing globally, was a direction that the sport, one, was traveling in, but also that the IRB could help that growth, help expand the vision of the industry, and take the international aspect forward. And that is what this company continues to do in association with some of the best people in the world. I've mentioned some of them: Breeders' Cup, JRA, Hong Kong Jockey Club, Saudi, Dubai, Bahrain, Qatar, some of the Australian turf clubs. It's fantastic working with them. It's a pleasure, it's a privilege, and it allows us to realize that international racing is, I believe, or international competition in racing is the pinnacle of our sport. And you see year after year the emphasis placed on fantastic race meetings in the UK, like Royal Ascot, the Ebor meeting at York, the glorious Goodwood, the Newmarket July meeting, the meetings at the Curragh and Leopardstown, the Champions Weekend, Irish Champions Weekend. These are the emphasis on getting international participation is growing year by year. And here at the IRB, we're proud to play a small part in trying to facilitate that and to grow it year by year. And it drives interest in the sport. And equally, we can't underestimate how it drives betting turnover as well. This sport lives and breathes off wagering and betting. And if we can produce a product that inspires greater international participation, the growth of the world pool is unbelievably significant in world racing now, and again demonstrates how this sport attracts interest from literally every corner of the globe. As the world pool expands and drives global betting, it brings income streams into the sport that are new and vital. especially in some of the jurisdictions that don't enjoy the same funding advantages that others do, like the UK and like Ireland. So international racing can only continue or our role is to try and help and assist international racing grow and thrive. And I believe passionately that is the way forward for the sport, and is what has perhaps driven me to make this move at this time in my career. I still believe that passionately, and believe that the IRB has a very important role to play in that goal, and it's a shared goal for the global racing industry, and that we're just pleased to be a small part of that.
Excellent. As you mentioned earlier, the IRB, has played an amazing role in globalizing thoroughbred racing since the late 70s. What do you see as the next frontier for internal racing development in the 2022s?
Wow. The new frontiers. We're always looking. We're always looking. I suppose look, there's growth, or one would hope there is growth to come throughout the world. It's important that we all continue to aspire to that. Having said that, we recognize the challenges that are out there, not just in the sport of horse racing, but in every sport, every area of the leisure and sports world. We're all scrabbling for our share, probably all slightly in the shadow of that huge global monster that is football, which dominates the sports scene. But racing has a global footprint. It has a global identity, and again, it was something that I took very much from my time at Tattersalls. There is not one continent in the world that I didn't travel to in the course of my work, which was great fun, unbelievably interesting, and just demonstrates that this is a magnificent sport with a global fan base. New frontiers. Look, we all hope that perhaps China will take that next step. There are obvious reasons why it's not taken that next step at this stage, but there are grassroots signs there. There are owners and participants in mainland China that have already showed the huge appetite for the sport, both the racing and the bloodstock side. In particular, Zhang Yusheng's Yulong team, who not only leading the way in horse racing in China, but also have a huge footprint in Australia and in Europe, mostly in the UK and Ireland at this stage. So China is a new frontier. It might be one that it might see me out, but equally it's important for all of us to recognise its importance in the future of this sport, and on the racing and the breeding side. Other countries which are showing signs of growth, obviously South Korea, the racing and breeding industries there are well established now at this stage. Obviously all of their racing, it was always an interesting one from the Tattersalls perspective, because they race purely on dirt at this point, and obviously in Europe, the strength is breeding the best turf horses to be found anywhere in the world. So sometimes it was a tough sell in that respect, but from the global racing aspect, I think South Korea is a country that has plenty to offer, and hopefully will continue to grow and thrive on the global stage. South America, again, has a rich history, a very rich history, and continue to race at a high standard and breed some very high quality horses. And South Africa, again, it's a country where there have been issues that have held it back in recent years, but hopefully it looks like many of those issues have reached resolution, and I think we'll continue to see South African racing and breeding re-establish itself on the global stage. But from the IRB perspective, we're here to assist with any of these markets or individual race courses even that aspire to attract international participation, both big and small. I've mentioned earlier some of the more obvious clients that we work for, some of the very biggest in the world, and that's a source of pride for everybody at the IRB. But equally, we work for a number of less obvious race courses throughout Europe, and only in the last couple of days we've been in touch with the race course in Budapest in Hungary to see whether we can assist them in promoting their most important race day, which is in the first week of September at their wonderful race course. I always feel I'm going to probably get the pronunciation wrong, but it's named after their most famous ever racehorse, a fantastic race mare called Kingshem, spelled Kinsem, who I believe holds the record for the longest ever unbeaten career of a thoroughbred. I believe Kingshem won 54, her 54 lifetime starts, and is an absolute legend in Hungary for obvious reasons, and is has a profile well outside, not just within Hungary. Anyway, the race course there is historic and beautiful, and Tattersalls have sponsored there for many years, which is why I've had a little bit of exposure to that. But yeah, we're in dialogue with not only the more obvious race courses and racing jurisdictions and racing authorities, but equally smaller countries where they're looking to expand and build a higher profile in the sport that we all love. So there are opportunities out there, and whilst on the new frontiers, equally the IRB have recently started working with Sorek in Morocco, again helping them raise the profile of their international race day in November. And I think North Africa is a region that can also thrive and expand in the coming years. And again, it sort of demonstrates that synergy between the racing and the bloodstock industries. These are markets that we have seen being increasingly active up at Tattersalls in the sales ring in recent years. North African buyers from Morocco, Libya, Tunisia, a little bit more action from those areas in the last few years. These things can be cyclical, but they tend to demonstrate when there's increasing confidence and enthusiasm behind racing jurisdictions. And as I say, we're always on the lookout, and the IRB will continue to explore new frontiers to look for ways in which we can assist in raising that, the international profile of the sport.
Excellent. I'd like to talk a bit more about technological innovation. How do you think digitalization changed the landscape of, international racing coordination, and what type of technological innovation would you maybe plan to implement at our IRB?
After 6 days here, it's hard to know quite what innovations one can implement in the short term. It's interesting that on the whole sort of technology IT front, everything we do changes and imperceptibly at times, almost just day to day, you're embracing technology, you're embracing change to make things easier in the way we interact with our various clients and try to push the boundaries, promote the sport to as wide a possible an audience, whether it's through social media or whether it's just basic technological advancement that allow us to communicate more effectively and more quickly with our client base. It's changed an enormous amount in the time that I've been involved in the bloodstock and racing industry, and in the time that a lot of the people here at the IRB have. We look back to when I started here, and Jane, my wife, was heading up the trainers service, and communication was by telex.
Oh, wow.
Now, we live in a generation. I mean, I have children in their mid-20s who wouldn't even know what a telex machine was. They hardly know what a fax machine is. So that's a measure of how much things have changed. And will continue to do. But all these advances, all these changes in technology have made what we do easier, and will only continue to do so. In terms of specifics, I think we've all harnessed and will continue to harness social media to make sure that messaging is quick and clear and effective, and to provide a window on the sport that everybody of all generations can buy into, and to put out a positive message about what is a wonderful sport and a wonderful industry. In terms of day-to-day logistics, communication with our client base now is so much more simple than it was when one harks back to the days of telex and fax machines. A press of a button, you can communicate with our entire client base, and that makes things so much easier. There are finer minds out there than me when it comes to IT, believe me. But we like every company, it's a vital, technology and technological advances will always play a part in how we build and grow.
Excellent. And finally, on to the last question. What lessons from Tattersalls success do you plan to apply in your new role at our IRB?
Tattersalls is a company that I was always very proud to work for. I view it as a world leader. As I mentioned earlier, it is the oldest firm of its type in the world and the largest in Europe, and it has existed for well over 250 years because it has always adhered to the very highest standards of working practice throughout that time. And every individual that works for Tattersalls, I believe, aspires to those standards of integrity, and you have to aspire to the highest standards in every working environment. And that I was lucky enough to work in that sort of environment for a very long time, and those standards I will bring to the company I'm now working for, the International Racing Bureau. And the great thing about that is that, having only walked through the door 6 days ago, I know that I'm joining a team that aspire to those very high standards and have shown those very high standards for the entire time that the International Racing Bureau has been in existence. So yeah, the standards I was used to at Tattersalls apply to the International Racing Bureau. We share those aspirations, and it's fantastic to move from one working environment to one.